Need you more proof of what heaven's choice is? Atreides is dead, and Harkonnen lives!
Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity, where we talk about drinking culture, pop culture, politics, and anything else that comes up. Joining me as always today is Brandon.
Hello, my people.
Kale.
Hi.
And since we're talking Dune, we've got Jim back with us today.
Hello.
So today we're talking about the other Dune property. Sci-Fi in 2000 released a miniseries, which was originally released as 3 episodes of a sort of a reboot of Dune. They actually did a sequel, I think, too. I think they did a Children of Dune after that, but I didn't watch that because I already watched 4 hours of this. So we are going to talk about that. But first of all, what is everybody drinking tonight, Brandon?
I've got a Negroni.
A Negroni. Anything special for Dune, or just felt like a Negroni?
Just felt like a Negroni.
Fair enough. Kale, what do you have?
Kind of reddish.
Well, I'm having a Poop Deck Patty, aka Admiral Nelson, and some Wild Cherry Pepsi. Even though I think Cherry Coke is better, but I prefer Pepsi products, and they have made good with the Frito-Lay workers, so I'll drink their stuff again.
Kicking it high class. Jim, what do you have tonight?
In my party people cup, I have a rum rambler. It's a concoction. It's mostly rum, vodka, triple sec, orange juice, and club soda because I didn't have any Sprite or 7-Up.
Fair enough. I have been attempting to create a cocktail for Dune since it's Dune month. And in my mind, for a Dune cocktail, it has to be 2 things. It has to be blue and it has to be spiced, since I think those are the 2 primary things you think about when you think about it. I've yet to name it. But this is a cocktail that you can't see because apparently it's too green for my green screen, but it actually is blue.
We can see the top of it.
And it is quite spicy, or not spicy, quite spiced. I put some allspice ram in there. And hopefully by the time you're seeing this, shortly after you see this, you should see the version that I'm going to post up, and everybody will like it. So Dune, sci-fi Dune. I have notes. I have lots of notes on this because I felt like I didn't want to miss things. I had heard some people say they thought that this version is sort of closer to the book than the David Lynch, which I think it may be, but it's also not that close to the book either. There's a lot of divergences in this movie too. So I don't know. It might be a bit closer. What do you guys think? Is it closer to the book than Lynch was?
I think a little bit closer, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, Erlon didn't visit all the time and that kind of thing. It's little things that are I don't ever picture his sister in some sort of religious hijab type of thing. That one seemed more like it was following Lynch's view of it than the book. I never pictured her that way in the story. But yeah, I think it did pretty good at sticking to the book for the most part.
So my first note that I wrote down upon watching this was Paul's a bitch. And I wrote that because I kind of think that Paul's a bitch in this movie. He's very, very whiny, and I don't know, he is nothing like I pictured Paul from the movie, and nothing like he was in the David Lynch movie. He just seems like a lot of the movie he spends being kind of an irritating 25-year-old teenager.
Yeah, he's very petulant and spoiled, which,
yeah,
I mean, you
really
kind of picture from a noble-born son, but it's like they decided to try that route and then abandoned it like a third of the way through.
I just don't get it. Like, why did they decide to do that? Because it seems like it doesn't fit with the Atreides ethos, doesn't fit with Paul in the book. It seems like, the kind of thing you'd see from the Harkonnens. I don't know. It just it was a sour note for me, for sure.
Well, yeah, I think Fade Ralpha and Paul are supposed to be like polar opposites, but in this, they're actually not that much different, like not that different from each other.
Right.
Okay, what did you think of Paul?
I concur. I feel like he was kind of a metaphor for nepotism.
but he's not supposed to be. I mean, he's supposed to be this person who's sort of he's does all these things on his own, without the help of his father or anybody
thoughtful
else.
and aware and observant. He's supposed to be pretty good diplomatically.
At the end, it seems like he raises the people up against the hierarchy,
but that kind of seems to come out of nowhere, because I feel like the Paul from this movie wouldn't have done that. Like, I feel like that's a thing that Paul from the book did, but that Paul from this movie would have been like, I don't know, now all the cars belong to me or something. Like, he would have done like kind of a little like shitty guy thing or something. I don't know. I think it was remarkably bad casting. And I know like they didn't have a ton of money for this movie. Like, they weren't getting, a lot of big name actors, but I feel like, I don't know how they came up with this guy as being the one that's supposed to play that part.
Well, that's the thing. It kind of feels like a Disney movie. Like they were going to go the route of he was like this, silver spoon in his mouth, nobility, and then he learned to rough it in the desert and take over and be the man whose father was supposed to be. And then they just that's how they started off, and then just decided to abandon ship and go with the book instead. Pretty early on.
I think even weird. Paul, before he goes out of the desert, Paul's not a bad guy or anything. He's just kind of like, I think he's probably a little naive, and maybe a little soft, from the perspective of being, landed royalty or whatever. Yeah. But he's not like a bad person. He's not like he's not mean. No. And I feel like in the movie they kind of portray him as kind of a piece of shit. A little bit. So we have unanimous agreement that Paul is in fact a bitch.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the other things I wrote down, you kind of mentioned earlier, is Irulan has a lot to do in the movie. Whereas in the book, Irulan is basically she's there to put forth, passages in her books and things like that, but she's not really fully an active character, even the book. I mean, even towards the end, she's just kind of, reading off lines from her books and her poems and things.
Yeah. Sure. Her book passages are what start each chapter, and that's really all you get. And it doesn't even sound like it's her reading it. It's like a computer voice almost reading it.
I didn't actually mind that. I thought of all the actors, a lot of the actors in here I didn't particularly like. I thought she was okay, and I didn't mind, one of the other female characters having a little bit of agency.
Yeah, I was going to say it's one of the few things where they just veered from the book that I thought, this is an acceptable choice in how to adapt the book, is to, use her as a vehicle to explore some of the stuff that's going on in the background and some of the motivations, instead of doing voiceover explaining things. So I actually thought she did a relatively good job acting, and I get why in this production they chose to use her as a vehicle to develop the story.
I think they would probably have to do something like if they ever make any of the Stormlight Archives into movies, every chapter has the same thing. It has writings from different prophecies and all that to begin the chapter. I think they're going to have to find some way to humanize or do that in a movie, because again, you don't want to really tell, you want to show. So they're going to have to put some sort of character doing the thing in there. It's not a bad call.
There wasn't nearly as much voiceover in the miniseries as there was in the '84 movie, but there still was some voiceover, and it, even though they cut it down, it is kind of grating a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring that up, because I think there was fewer, but because there was fewer, it was almost more noticeable when they did it. You're like, wait a minute, who's talking? Oh, wait, this is a monologue. It kind of takes you by surprise a little bit.
But there's no exposition through dream. Arrakis, Dune, desert planet, moving.
Thanks.
So one of the things that I thought was an interesting divergence from the book is he meets Stilgar in, like, when they first get there. Shortly after they first get there, he meets Stilgar. which that I think was a bad divergence from the book, because I think them meeting in the desert, Jessica and Paul meeting Stilgar in the desert. I kind of thought it was important to the book that they hadn't met before, that it was kind of a chance meeting, and that those were the first Fremen that they ever met.
Yeah, they almost used him as a fill-in for the smuggler that's at the dinner table. And they didn't really talk about the smugglers too much. And they're kind of a power on their own. But neither did the Lynch film, I guess. They didn't really talk about them too much either.
I think they kind of talked about them a little bit towards the beginning of like giving them I don't know how you, like they have they're stealing a little bit, and like the Atreides will just kind of let them get away with stealing like a certain amount basically, and then they'll transfer it to the Emperor. But yeah, not really much. Of course, I don't think they didn't have an enormous impact in the book, I don't think either.
No.
Are we supposed to assume that the smugglers all joined up with the Fremen, or just that one particular group?
Oh, you mean Gurney Hallett's? I don't.
Yeah.
I think
that's the funny thing. Paul says we'll figure out what to do with them after whatever. I don't remember them actually going back and saying what they did with them.
In the book, some of them are Harkonnen spies, and they, and they do touch on that in the miniseries too, because they capture the one and send him back. And then, at least in the book, all the rest of them that aren't Harkonnen spies do join up.
Well, Jim, what are the thoughts you have sort of on the first little third, like the first sort of the opening, them getting to Arrakis and our introduction to the Baron, which we should talk about? And
I actually wanted to back up to the smugglers and ask if anyone remembers in the book, did the Fremen kind of allow some of the smugglers? Like, do they get kickbacks from the smugglers? It seems like I kind of remember that, but
I don't know if they said that overtly or not. I got that impression because the Fremen are also paying off the Space Guild too, and so you get the impression that they kind of have somewhat more friendly relationships with smugglers too, just for when it suits them.
Right. So I will say I watched this all in one go late at night.
You're a stronger man than I.
I just decided to rip that Band-Aid off and get it over with. So it all kind of runs into a blur for me. I don't know. I thought the guild transport ships were kind of interesting how they did that. That was different than the movie. I don't know if it was better necessarily, but I thought it was an interesting take on it.
Sorry, speaking of the guild ships, since you bring it up, they talk about how the spice is like the control of the universe, but the guild ships are the only way they can travel that far. So really, they have a lot of power too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things the Lynch, I mean, in the book, they don't make it so obvious, like they don't walk around and tell the Emperor what to do in his own palace and all that, but in the Lynch film, they do that quite a bit.
Yeah, that scene in the Lynch film, I feel like I like that scene because it shows the power of the guild, but I hated that they made the Emperor seem stupid because he just kept on saying yes, 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 like he's a idiot. And that's one of the things that I like better about the the first third of this TV series is the Emperor really does seem like a power player in the TV show. That he's not, just
that he's closer to an equal footing.
Right.
I did think the first time I saw the Emperor, because I know the actor and he's been in a bunch of stuff before, and I felt like he was just wearing a T-shirt that said "famous character actor earning a paycheck."
He was in A Walk in the Clouds.
He's been in a bunch of stuff. He's been around for a long time, but just like famous character actor slums it for a paycheck.
Gurney Halleck, Hatchet Harry from Lockstock.
Right. Yep. Oh, that's I recognized him, but I didn't recognize where I recognized him from.
I kept hearing his voice and I was like, that sounds really familiar. So I had to look it up. Yep.
I have a question. So I kind of like to talk about how some of these characters were introduced. and I am totally forgetting the Mentat for the Atreides. I don't even remember him being. I mean, I know he was in. He must have been in that first scene with Paul, but I don't remember him really popping up at all after that.
They say he died in the raid at some point during the miniseries. They say he died when the same time that like Duncan Idaho and everybody died.
Okay, so I completely missed that, and I felt like later on, I'm like, where is he? Because
Right.
it's it's definitely an important part of the book with him working for the Harkonnens and struggling with that, and coming back to Paul at the end, but he just disappears in the TV show. I thought that was kind of a strange choice.
See, that's the thing. I was just thinking about it now, and I can't particularly tell you what would have changed in the book if they had cut that part out, like if Howlett had died in the raid. Like, he gives advice to Harkonnen, but Harkonnen still does the thing he was going to do anyway. I mean, Howlett's basically responsible for him realizing there's more Fremen than he thought there was.
So I guess I would say, from the book's perspective, a lot of it is, for me, kind of the different fates of the Paul's teachers. Like Gurney Halleck ends up working with Paul. Thufir ends up working with the Harkonnens, although he's very torn about it, but he feels like he has to. The other thing that I feel like the movie hit on more, but still kind of missed some of it, is the importance of Paul also being a Mentat and having Mentat abilities and what Mentats mean for this society. I feel like that's something that the book explores a lot, or at least is very foundational to some of the stuff that happens in the book, and the TV show just glossed over it.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal that he is both Bene Gesserit and Mentat. It's quite a power combined.
Well, let's talk about some of the big characters, just how we beat him. So what do we think of William Hurt being probably the only actor that most people knew when they watched this movie as the Duke?
First 5 minutes.
He's mostly always a decent choice.
So I thought he's a great actor. I just didn't buy him in this role.
I think I liked Jurgen Prochnow in the original.
Yeah.
I think I liked him a little better. I felt like William Hurt was like, I feel like when you get an actor of William Hurt's sort of caliber, it's like they can turn in a decent performance basically without really trying that much. They just come in and be William Hurt. And I feel like that's kind of what he did. Like, he came in, he was William Hurt, he was perfectly serviceable, but I don't feel like he was doing anything that was particularly groundbreaking or anything.
Out of curiosity, sorry, Gil, go ahead.
I was going to say they needed a name. They needed
right. Yeah, I think you're right.
To bring people in.
Out of curiosity, who would you pick to play? Like, if you had to cast, you don't have to do it for every character or anything, but for.
Well, honestly, I'll tell you, they cast in the new movie. They have Oscar Isaacs as Duke Leto, and I think that's a pretty good casting. I think he could do pretty well in that part. We kind of talked about that a little bit when we were talking about the book, but I think he could do pretty well in there. So, so then the one that I think is the most interesting one to talk about is the Baron, because we're coming off of our super, super crazy over the top Baron to a slightly less crazy over the top Baron. I put a note down. The Baron is 10% less cartoonish here as he was in the David Lynch film. And I think maybe 20% less cartoonish. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I give him 50%.
He was better.
He was still pretty cartoonish.
He still had the weird giggle after he survives, which just isn't. I don't know. That's just not how I picture the Baron.
And
but
zipping
he was definitely
around.
better.
So I liked him less. I think he was less over the top, but also a lot less menacing. He's just, I don't know.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
I think I like this guy a little more, but not much more. I don't know. I don't think either of them really captured it. It's just sort of like, I don't know. I feel like they're focusing on the physical aspects of him. They're saying, well, okay, he's big. he uses the little repulsor things. I know it's not repulsors, but like whatever it is, and that's the character. But I feel like that kind of minimizes who the actual character is, and kind of, I don't know. I'm hoping who's playing him in the new movie. It's the guy that played Selvig in the Thor movies.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Skarsgård.
Skarsgård, yeah. Stellan Skarsgård.
Oh, yeah.
I think he could actually do a really good job too. I'm really excited about the new movie. Even more excited, you might say, than a Sci-Fi Channel original movie.
I hope they get to the idea that he isn't just floating around in the air. The suspensors are keeping his fat off the ground so he can move.
Right. That's what I always got the impression of.
Yeah. I never got the impression that he's like
just tooling around on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The one that I found to be the most generic was, and I put in my notes, Fade Ralpha is the most generic actor in the show. And I feel like that actor, you could have cast him in any of the roles because he doesn't have any, it's like he doesn't have any innate like personality. I'm sorry, I'm shitting on the actor. He's probably a perfectly nice person, and I don't have anything against him or anything, but like he just came off as so, I'm here and I'm the bad guy, I guess. I don't know. What did you guys think?
Yeah. It was forgettable.
He was. He didn't seem menacing.
He seemed like an assistant manager at McDonald's.
So I feel
at the end with the big. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like Paul and Fade, they cast them and had them act like it was a teenage soap opera, not a science fiction space opera, I guess.
Yeah, the big climactic fight, it just looked like two rich kids slap fighting each other.
And also, well, we'll get to that at the end, but yeah. So who else do we introduce? Stilgar, I think, was fine. I didn't dislike him.
Well, and they brought in oh god, just a moment ago I had his name. The aborted Kwisatz Haderach.
Oh yeah. Fenric.
Yeah.
Fenring.
Count Fenring.
Fenring. Yes. Yeah.
And I think he is possibly one of the most interesting. Like, if you were going to do a spinoff book, I think following his life could be super interesting. And Lynch cut him out entirely. I was glad they had him in here, but they didn't do much with him.
Raban. Does anybody have?
Raban is forgettable, though.
Yeah,
Raban
I mean,
is mostly somebody you just hear about. I don't mind that.
He just stands in the crowd of poor people and yells. That's his part. You see him like 3 times.
But he's in there. He's in before there a few times. I don't know. That's one of those funny things. Like it sort of reminds me of like in Star Wars, how after the Star Wars movies came out, Boba Fett became this incredibly important character that everybody loved, and you watch the Star Wars movies, and he's like in it 3 times for like 4 minutes, and it's a lot of the Dune characters are like that. I mean, even the sort of semi-important, like Raban. I don't know. Does Raban have more than 2 or 3 lines in the entire book?
Honestly, when you asked me, I had to check the list of cast to make sure he was actually in the TV show.
Yeah, he kind of disappears.
In the book, he's mostly just talked about by Harkonnen and Fade sometimes. And you hear about what he's doing, and he's told to squeeze the people and all that. But I mean, as far as lines, I don't know that he says anything really.
He screams a couple of times.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a part later on when they invade the siege where Paul and Jesus, I can't think of anybody's name. I literally just finished this. Yeah, Chani, Paul and Chani's kid, and there's these 2 Harkonnen soldiers that go in there. Is one of them Raban, or does that just look like Raban?
He just looks like him.
I think it just looks like him.
Okay, because I was like I was given pause. I was like, wait a minute, that's because it does look like him, but I'm not sure if it's actually him or not.
That brings up a good point. Well, at least it reminds me of something that I really disliked. Like the when the siege gets invaded and it's all old people and children, like in the book, the children and the old people are fiercely fighting. In the TV show, it just did not look like that at all. And
Well, I think most of the fight scenes suffer from budget because, like, the battle scenes do not look good. The battle scenes look like they had 35 people total, and they kept shifting scenes so it would try to make it look like there was more than 35 people, but it's pretty clear there's only 35 people. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Raban was gone.
If you watch closely during that big raid scene, you'll see a couple of times where it's like say they were professional wrestlers and like they both forgot what they were supposed to do next for a second. If you watch that scene, you'll see a couple of people in the background going like, oh yeah.
Since we're talking about the battle scenes, I wrote down Harkonnen's soldiers look like a samurai fucked a traffic cone. The
look pretty bad in the
Harkonnen
Lynch movie too. I mean,
the Harkonnen soldiers just can't get a break.
yeah. It's like they can't do scary.
Samurais. Like there's nothing samurai about their culture at all, but they're like, but they have to look different. So put samurai masks on them.
right,
But they're orange.
they have those left over from some special few years.
Oh, I'll
before.
bet you that's it. I would not be at all surprised if there was like a production of some Japanese thing that was like next door, and they're like, can we take those? Yeah.
There was samurai, and then there was the what they called the sand people. That was the outfits that the Fremen were wearing, and then how do you say that? The ones that start with the S, the like super badass soldiers.
Sardaukar.
Okay, do they not look like if the gendarmes were Nazis?
I was thinking they were Venetian.
They really should go to the prison planet.
They looked ridiculous. They were not intimidating at all. Like,
I don't know. I think it's becoming clear fairly early on here that we do not have a great deal of nice things to say about this, and I apologize. I do think it is clear they were trying to kind of hem closer to the book. I think they didn't really have the budget for it, and I think that they, God love these actors, but you can tell that a lot of these people are not super accomplished actors. I mean, in the David Lynch film, there are people that are acting over the top because that is a choice that David Lynch made because David Lynch is David Lynch. But in this one, I think a lot of the problems aren't really a choice. They're just, you had what you had to work with, and you were like, well, we got 3 takes, and that's the best of the 3 takes. So let's move on.
Right.
Which is a shame, but I think they had good intent behind it.
Are you giving it a mercy rule?
No, honestly, I thought it was better than the Lynch film. I thought it was a decent adaptation. I thought the worms looked better. There was definitely times where you could tell they were on a soundstage with matte painting, but I thought the special effects weren't bad for 2000. I mean, I don't think 2000. You go back to like not the original the Phantom Menace. It's about comparable. The Phantom Menace kind of looked like bad in a lot of spots too, but I don't know. I thought this wasn't bad.
The Phantom Menace also looks like shit now too.
Yeah, but I mean, for a sci-fi channel TV show, I don't think they did too bad.
So I can appreciate what you're saying, but I will say I would rewatch the Dune film any day before rewatching the sci-fi channel TV show.
Yeah, I'll kind of.
It's really good, but I feel like there's enough interesting and entertaining takes in the film to make it worth watching and rewatching. I would.
See, I'm kind of the opposite. I would fast forward through the Lynch film if I was forced to watch it again.
Would you watch the TV show again?
Probably not. I'm not saying it's great.
Fair point.
But if
fair
I had
point.
to make the choice, I would probably go with the show.
I would go with the Lynch film because it's weirder. And I feel like as good of intent as I think they had with the Sci-Fi Channel thing, I think they just didn't have the gas in the tank to really do any of it justice. And so like I would watch a weird David Lynch making weird little slugs in space, making holes in the universe, and heavy metal music over people riding giant worms. Like, I don't know. It's so weird. I would maybe watch it again. I'm not saying I will watch it again, but I'm saying I could see myself watching it again.
I pose a question. What if J.J. Abrams directed it?
If J.J. Abrams directed it, there would be a cliffhanger, which he would not have ever thought about. And then everybody would be disappointed how it turned out because he never thought about how it would actually end. Because J.J. Abrams is fundamentally flawed as a filmmaker. But that's a whole different topic. So what other characters? Kynes. What do we think of Kynes?
Kynes wasn't bad.
That's about all I have to say. I didn't think he was bad either, but it's like a lot of the characters, like Fade is the most generic, obviously, as I've said, but I just feel like so many of the characters, I just kind of like, oh, okay, sure, that's them.
Yeah.
Chani, what do we think of Chani?
I feel like I watched this just a week ago, and you keep on saying characters. I'm like, not sure. I remember that character in the show. So I thought Chani did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I thought she was good.
I would say that
was she better than Sean Young? Because Sean Young, I don't think Sean Young honestly did a very good job as Chani. I don't think we talked about her very much when we talked about the Lynch film.
Yeah, we didn't
really talk about her.
So I thought it was weird they cast like an incredibly white lady to play Chani.
So I think I preferred this Chani to Sean Young.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
I think Jessica wasn't bad too. They made the same mistake as the Lynch film in making her kind of like scared at some points and like fragile at some points, which just isn't Jessica. But I think she was decently cast. I think the woman did her best with her.
I like the original.
Sean Young.
No, the Jessica.
Oh, I think I would go with the original, but it's close either way.
And I do like Patrick Stewart, but this Gurney was better.
Yeah, Hatchetary took it.
Yep.
Patrick Stewart should have been the other one. Should have been Thufir.
I'm just kind of going down my notes. I said I thought Raban looked like Jack Black, and I think I stand by that. It's not important. Okay, this is something that really bothered me a lot about this movie. The blue eyes were just wildly inconsistent. People just sometimes had them and sometimes didn't. And sometimes they would literally appear like in the middle of a shot. Like somebody would have regular eyes and then they would just kind of turn blue. And it was like, okay, just don't have them then. Just have every blue contact. I don't know.
And they glowed so much, like they were radioactive.
Did you notice how offset it was, like in the lighting? What was with the lighting, by the way? Like in some parts, like the background was super lit up, and then like they would always change it, like when they'd like try to emulate that they were just focusing on this one person in a room full of people. And it would get real dark, and then this one light would come up, and I don't get it. It was overly theatric.
Well, I think the first thing, by the way, don't say overly theatric after we just watched David Lynch.
Yeah. Which was just weird for weird's sake.
But I think one of the problems with the lighting overall is that they shot everything. It looks like to me like they basically shot everything on a soundstage. And when you're shooting on a soundstage, I think sometimes it's hard to get a natural looking light. There are very few lights that look like the sun. And I think there's a lot of times they're outside. And Brandon, you mentioned some of the matte paintings that they were standing against, which, again, it's because of the budget, they just had to. I mean, there's you can't afford to send all these actors, out in the desert somewhere.
You can see the same thing in the colored parts of Wizard of Oz. There's so many times where the road extends out into nothing and it's just the painting and you can tell it's a painting. But
Wizard of Oz special effects.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the curve we're grading.
Yeah, it's fair to. It shouldn't have to compare it to a movie that was made 70 years before it, but
Can you imagine
I
if
don't know.
Paul had red ruby slippers? The power he would.
So your comment about Jack Black actually made me think somebody needs to make this into a musical or a comedy, for sure.
That would be interesting. Can you imagine watching Dune on Broadway?
There'd be some great sandworm dance numbers. I mean, yeah.
I can see them, like,
Sandworms
in the
would almost
background,
have to be
doing
like those paper dragons.
I was thinking the sandworms in the background doing like the Michael Jackson from Thriller. Yeah, the eyes really bothered me because it was like, it wasn't just like, oh, they missed one or two here. It was like throughout the whole thing, like Stilgar would have whole scenes where his eyes weren't blue. And it's like, edit that. That's your job. Somebody should be editing that. And they didn't. They just were like, fuck it, close enough.
Yeah, because that seems like that could not be that time intensive.
Fuck is that? Kale.
Don't pour right next to your microphone.
Peeing.
At least I'm assuming you're pouring.
Okay, fine.
At least put the seat down when you're done.
No, I splashed all over. Oh, jeez.
All right. So what were you saying? I'm sorry.
G rating. No.
Well, we already talked about it, but I said the princess actually has things to do, which was nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is getting really petty, but it bugged me. I'm sorry. So I put down worst sheet covering boob scene ever because Paul and Chani are literally having sex and she has a sheet over her. Like, I'm not saying you have to show nudity. You don't have to, but you could film that in a way that's not like, I'm wearing my towel. You're not wearing a towel when you're having sex. That's insane. That looks weird.
I'm assuming they showed nudity because on the version I watched, it had big blurry boxes over everything.
Well, so that also leads to my other one. They had a PG-13 orgy, which I thought was entertaining. Like, it was like, imagine like you were trying to show like a scene out of a Clive Barker movie on ABC at 6 p.m. Like, you'd have to make some pretty serious cuts.
It always makes me think of those. I don't remember who said it. The L-shaped sheets.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Except this
like
was a
here
sheet
and
that
then
literally
down
is just
there.
on one person in the middle. They are mid-coitus. They are mid-coitus. Why would she? That doesn't make any sense.
Maybe her boobs were cold.
I
Maybe.
just don't understand when they have to do stuff like that, why they even put it in. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Just shoot it in a way that it doesn't look like that, but it's just, I don't know. It's a little thing. It's not important at all, but it's
several movies have done it where, they like show the people starting to romance each other and they're kissing and stuff. And then they go to the bedroom and then it's just assumed. You don't have to
out.
a fade Ralph out. So speaking of fade, so Irulan has her little like personal like person, right? I don't know. Like, I don't know whether was she supposed to be a mentat?
I don't think
the bald girl.
Oh, I don't know. Her,
I wasn't
the
clear about it
flower
because she
thing?
sends her after Fade,
her
kind of.
henchwoman,
Huh?
her henchwoman.
Yeah. Did she have like stuff on her forehead?
Yeah, she had like a little flower thing on her forehead.
Yeah.
When she sent her there, I don't know. If
I can't stress this enough to our viewers. We all just watched this. We are
Well-
not remembering this from 5 or 10 years ago. We literally all just watched this within the last couple of days.
I listened to it.
I literally just finished it like a couple hours ago.
Yes, it was not. So, Brandon, when we're talking about this versus the Lynch film, at least the Lynch film is super memorable. Sometimes in terrible ways, memorable, but it's memorable.
Mostly terrible ways.
Well,
Permanent old face.
yeah.
So that character was not in the book at all, right?
No,
No, I don't think so.
because Irulan's not that much in the book either.
So
So having a henchwoman would have been weird.
Also, did she ever come back? Like, I felt like she sent her off, and maybe I fell asleep, but then I felt like that was kind of the end of it. Did we ever really?
I don't remember her coming back, but I could be wrong. Because she just kind of like,
Is
she
it
didn't really
just
serve a
me, or
purpose.
Hope he didn't like
Is-
do some sort of weird King Joff shit to her.
Yeah, but I don't think Fade's that evil. Like, that's the other thing. Like, so comparing the 84, right? For the original
Yeah.
versus this one. Sting was not good as Fade Ralpha. I will not make the argument that Sting was good as Fade Ralpha. But he seemed at least kind of menacing. I feel like this Fade was like locking kids in their lockers or something. Like he taking people's lunch monies. Like he didn't seem like he was on that level of evil.
The guy that played Fade, he reminded me of the guy that played Jigsaw on the Punisher series.
Yeah, a little bit. Except not as good. Less memorable. So another thing, again, I feel like this is all petty stuff, but this is what I wrote down when I was watching it. Again, if you haven't realized by now, I didn't particularly care for this film. I think it does have some redeeming characteristics, but I did not care for it. The hats were getting a little out of control at a certain point. One of Irulan's hats stuck back solidly 2 feet and like 2 feet up. That's not practical headwear at all. And then like the
derby hat.
No, that isn't, like, that puts derby hats to shame. And then like the Emperor was wearing a big hat at one point, and like the Space Guild people were wearing like 3-foot yarmulkes. I don't know what they're not like. They look like fezzes. It looked like a 3-foot fez. I was surprised there wasn't like a little tassel on top.
Yeah,
We are the people who wear big hats.
I found the guild, the acting of the guild, and the hand gestures and the weird.
Oh yeah, look.
Yeah, really off-putting.
One guy literally did that. He ended like.
Yeah, I think that would make it into the comedy or the musical or both.
He was doing like the reverse Dr. Evil. He was like,
I saw the little bit where the people got revenge.
Burns.
Was that on Raban, where they cut off his head? That was good.
Yeah,
because I mean, you just kind of ignore the people in the city who are the ones that really took all the blunt force of Raban, because he never really got to the Freeman.
So I feel like I should say something nice since I've been saying mean things all the time. I thought, especially given the era and the budget and everything, I thought the worms looked pretty good.
Yeah, so
certainly better, I think, than they had any right to look given the budget and the time. Yeah, worms look good.
I thought the sand looked fine. Sand was good.
I thought
sand.
the Fremen sets were good. The Fremen stages were good. I thought they looked pretty realistic.
I was wondering about the one. Are they outside or are they inside and it's made to look like it's outside?
Well, that's, again, I think that's one of the problems of the way it's filmed, because they're doing it on sound stages. The outside stuff is filmed on a sound stage and the inside stuff is filmed on a sound stage. There are certain times where I think it's kind of hard to tell whether or not they're supposed to be in one of the sieges or
in
out
the
mountain. Yeah,
So,
I don't know. I wish they could have just. I wish they could have gotten a little bit of money to go out, because I mean, there's desert near LA, and I'm assuming they filmed this around LA, and just gone out to the desert to film for a couple of days, just to get a couple of really good outside desert scenes. Because I think that's very striking. Like, filming desert on an inside stage just doesn't look very good, and it's very clear that you're not in the desert.
So
they had a lot of restrictions on as far as budget goes.
So one of the things that bothered me about the scenes that appeared like they were outside and everybody's just doing stuff outside is it really minimizes how harsh the environment is on Arrakis. They're not wearing still suits. They're just hanging out and pouring water and doing stuff. And I feel like the Lynch film did a better job of portraying that if you're going to do that, you're inside, you're underground. as soon as you are thinking about going outside, you have to wear a still suit. But my question was it actually outside? Was it supposed to be inside? But they didn't really make it look like it was inside.
Well, I think, to be fair, the one thing, so in the Lynch film, they were always wearing still suits, but they were never wearing the face coverings, which is one of those problems from sort of that era of film. It's like, if you hire an actor, it's like the Judge Dredd problem. If you hire an expensive actor, you can't put a mask on their face for a significant part of the film. So at least in this film, it did show them wearing the full, well, not full. They didn't have anything over their eyes, but like it showed them wearing the relatively full still suit, at least a little bit. I don't think, did they ever wear the full still suit in the Lynch film?
I don't think so.
If they did, I don't remember it anyway. And I think also, given the budget, I think the still suits look pretty decent. They didn't look bad.
And
I think the secret on a budget film like that is don't try and make them too complicated, because once you start to overcomplicate it, then they're going to start to look really bad.
They did put in the Jepsen fight too, which the Lynch film I think ignored. I don't think they did that.
Oh, the first guy.
Yeah.
Jepsen?
The guy that he kind of beats out in the desert, and then he challenges him to a fight because he's embarrassed by it.
Okay.
The first person that Paul kills. Did they do that in the Dune extended version? Seems like they did.
I don't remember them doing it, but I'm not 100% sure. They could have. The extended, by the way, if you watch Dune again, the extended version is definitely the one to watch. And maybe, Brandon, I almost wonder if we differ on this a little bit, because you watched the regular version, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the extended version of Dune does add a lot of things. Like, honestly, the character that I think gets the most short shrift in the theatrical version is Everett. Oh God, what's his name?
Stilgar.
Yeah, Stilgar. In the regular theatrical version of the David Lynch film, he is basically there to announce places where they're at, which is really a shame, because Stilgar is one of the more interesting characters in the show, or in the movie.
I think one thing that the TV show did better was developing a little bit Stilgar and Paul, the tension there, where Stilgar feels like Paul is going to have to call him out to be the leader.
Yeah, that's true. That's basically not talked about at all in the Lynch film. Also, the little worm they have to kill for the water of life looks actually pretty good. Not even considering budget and era. I think that the small worm looked very good.
Well, and I was impressed too that they came up with an actual plan for how they would destroy the spice and put it into the show, and he didn't just like magic rain, like at the end of the Lynch film, which would have killed everything and all the spice would be gone. But
one thing I think they touched on a little bit in the show they didn't talk about in the movie at all, although still I think was very much pushed to the back, is my understanding, and you guys can sort of tell me if you feel the same way, is that in the book, all this is set up by the Bene Gesserit. None of this stuff is, the stuff the Fremen believe, about the Mahdi and all this other stuff. It's all just invented out of whole cloth by the Bene Gesserits and their missionaries, just in case somebody ever lands. So in other words, like, Arrakis isn't the only place where this is where these myths exist. It's on every inhabited world. There's Bene Gesserit missionaries that have sort of planted these things, and I think in the Lynch film they basically don't mention it at all. And I think in the movie or in the TV show / miniseries, whatever, they talk about it a little bit, but it's still not. I don't think it's front and center as it should be, because I think that's one of the main takeaways from the book, is this idea that these people are using the religion to just further their own political ends.
The Sitch Reverend Mother does bring it up. She does say, I see you're using our support structure or whatever, our fables well. She says to Jessica.
Well, like I said, they did, but in my mind, when I read the book, I thought that was a really important thing. I thought that was something that should be focused on, because again, like I said, they did it better than the Lynch film did, but they still didn't do a ton with it. And I feel like that's something that really should be kind of front and center.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the Bene Gesserit's superpower, is kind of they're perfectly willing to make 1,000-year, 2,000-year long plot and put it across a universe and have all sorts of legends and stuff. They're operating behind the scenes to move their pieces, as opposed to, you know, the Emperor and the Spacing Guild seem much more direct, and maybe because they have more apparent power than Bene Gesserit do.
It's like their superpower is time and patience.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
I think they did well in making, especially this Stilgar and most of the Freeman you come upon, they have a basic prophecy and a kind of religion going, but the entire book is kind of telling you to be careful of charismatic religious leaders. And there's one part in the book where he realizes that Stilgar has become kind of a disciple to him, and it has lessened the man, and it makes him kind of sad because now he's, you know, just always going to say yes and all this. He's not going to challenge him anymore. And I think they did a better job in the miniseries to conveying that, because the Stilgar in the Lynch film was almost on board right from the beginning. But
Yeah, in the
Go ahead.
In the miniseries, I agree with you there. I feel like he kind of became his Peter.
That's
No
disgusting.
pun intended. But
His little
it's kind of along those lines. Like, the whole plot that I understood was like his mom basically tried to make it out to these other people that he was going to be their savior, not really believing that he was going to be the savior, and he doesn't know. He wasn't really meant to be, and then somehow he just magically, just ends up being their savior. Luckily for them, and the whole thing is like based on lies. And on top of that, when he finds out that he's Harkonnen's grandson or whatever, couldn't he just argue that he has a right to the throne in their family because he's a actual direct descendant as opposed to a nephew?
It's an interesting point.
Well, so maybe just and we sort of touched on this in the previous videos about this, but there is an understated in the book. There's sort of an understated conflict between Paul and Jessica, which I was always a little confused or didn't fully understand, and I'm not sure what you guys think. Where Jessica, her perspective is basically like, we use these legends to kick the Harkonnen out of Arrakis, get you back in the get your Dukehood and all this other stuff. But let's not go full jihad. Let's be kind of measured with our use of the Fremen, and that Paul is sort of almost buying into his own deification or his own deityhood to some degree. What do you guys think about that? And in either whether in the Lynch film, this or the book.
So I feel like in the book, and I think this gets not dealt with very well in the movie or the TV show, that Paul feels forced into going further down the jihad route, that he has to, but he also sees out farther into the future and says, wow, this is leading to really dangerous place. So I think to a certain extent there is conflict with his mom, but I think Paul has some of the same concerns.
In the book, it's kind of the opposite. In the book, his mom has less vision than he does, and she thinks she's just pushing him to make the Freeman his, so that he can claim the throne of Arrakis, claim the dukedom. But in there's one part in the book where Paul says his mom has become his enemy because she's the one that, as far as he can see, is going to be the reason the jihad happens. He keeps trying to avoid it, and she keeps pushing him in a direction that, on the timelines he can see, is going to make the jihad happen.
But it still confuses me as exactly the sort of the methods, and it seems like, I don't know if he was being sort of intentionally, Herbert, that is sort of being intentionally a little bit unclear on it. Like we don't really know, and like we as an audience don't really know. Like maybe Jessica's right or maybe Paul's right.
So I do think one of the messages that he clearly conveys is that it's a dangerous thing to unleash. And even if you're the Kwisatz Haderach, it's really hard to foresee how you're going to be able to contain it.
Yeah, Paul seems like he's just trying to do the best he can. As far as Jessica goes, I mean, yeah, she has an agenda, but she doesn't seem that far-fetched from any typical overbearing mother. I mean, it's a relatable character in that matter.
Well, and she's obviously amenable to changing the Bene Gesserit's plan. She did the moment she had Paul. So I got the feeling in the book, like, had he just spoken up and told her of the possibility and what he thought she was pushing him toward or what he was seeing, then that might have gone differently. But it's almost a trope. One of the things that a lot of protagonists do is get themselves into trouble by not saying anything to somebody who could actually help them.
Well, so the first video we did on the book, I like to put a little B-roll before we start our videos, and the video I used is a quote from Frank Herbert, and he was doing I think it was a morning show interview, and I sort of appreciate that interview because there are a lot of authors out there that can be very inscrutable, and that they're like, well, it could mean anything. It means this to these people, and it's kind of frustrating because you're like, well, what did you mean? Like, what do you think? And sort of he just very much says they're like, what is all this really about? And Herbert says, well, the point of the story is that leaders aren't always right and can't always be trusted. And if you take that as sort of the moral, that means that sort of in the beginning, that is referring to Duke Leto, to the Baron, and to the Emperor, as those are the leaders that can't be trusted. But then moving forward, that maybe that also applies to Paul and Jessica and Stilgar and all these other people. That basically, no matter who it is in charge, maybe you should maintain a relative amount of suspicion and skepticism about their divinity.
Well, it strikes me that the scene where the people cut off Raban's head in the miniseries is almost a little subversive. It's making you stop thinking about the noble houses and the white savior and all this other stuff, and making you think about the actual people who have had to increase the spice production, who have gone through this tyrannical reign. And I think about them a lot. Like when we were watching Game of Thrones, I think about like how many people just one guy in the army is like, why are we doing this again? Why am I charging up this hill for somebody else to get a lot more gold that I'll never see? Why am I doing this?
It kind of brings to mind that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where King Arthur comes across the peasants, and he's like, "I'm your king," and he's like, "King?
I didn't vote for you." Yeah.
Like,
I never
we are the
voted for
Britons.
you.
He's like, who are the Britons?
How'd you become king then?
Yeah. I also wrote in here at the end that for some reason Paul wore a Karate Kid headband, and I didn't know why he did that. It was a little strange. But then again, there's questionable headgear throughout basically the whole thing.
Well, it was part
wasn't
of
a
his
tall
imagery.
headband.
Because remember, they mentioned something about the Phoenix, and like all of his his robes that he was adorned with in that scene had the Phoenix all over it.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of wanted to like it. I don't know. And also I think we all watched this either in one sitting or two sittings. I watched it in two sittings. Jim, you said one. Yep. This originally came out as 3 episodes. Maybe it would have felt better as 3 episodes where you're not having to bust through the whole damn thing. I don't know. I wanted to like it a lot. I didn't like it a lot. I'll just say that.
I have to say that the thing that it made me concerned that the movie's going to be terrible. I don't think it will, but after watching it, I'm like, wow, you got the book to go on. You have somebody's already tackled the movie. This is the second go around. This is I know you have a relatively limited budget, but it was pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
There's still a 20-year difference, though. I mean, it's got to be better.
Well, I mean, like I said, I've said it in previous episodes, and I'll say it again. Denis Villeneuve is a really, really accomplished filmmaker. Blade Runner 2049 is a masterpiece in my mind. It made 25 cents at the box office, unfortunately, but it was a great film, and it was a gorgeous film. So I think if nothing else, Dune's going to look great. There's no way that film's not going to look fantastic, and the cast is incredible. I mean, it's got just an amazing cast for that movie.
There's Dave
Miniseries. The miniseries has 7 out of 10 on IMDb and 75% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, I knew, like, especially when it came out, and I wasn't real big into Dune, but I know when it came out, there was a lot of big Dune fans that liked it a lot, and a lot of people liked it a lot more than the David Lynch movie.
I think in the end, I think I'm in that camp. I think the David Lynch movie is almost unwatchable. I wouldn't do it again.
Well, it's clearly not entirely unwatchable because we all watched it.
That's how I know it.
what I like about it is that it's weird and it's David Lynch, and I feel like the mini series I think probably does. By the way, so just who do we all think that and Kale, you can kind of just I don't know whatever you think, but do we think that the mini series hemmed closer to the book than the David Lynch film did?
I think so. Anyway.
I think so.
I think it probably did too. I don't think like there were people that I talked to or heard, posts or whatever about where they thought that, the mini series was like exactly like the book or almost exactly.
I don't
like
think it was that.
That's not true either.
No.
But I think, it was definitely closer than the David Lynch film was.
There's no yelling guns that yelled your opponents to death. So there's a big.
Well, that's a negative, Brandon. Who doesn't want to yell gun?
You know how many times I've tried that in real life?
That's just
what
you
I
yelling
want
at
you to
people.
do is put barbell pole reins on this giant worm, ram it into a wall, and then scream at your opponents until they explode. Can you do that? Sure.
I think that's a great screenplay, a great elevator pitch for a movie. I'm trying to think. Did you guys have any other things? I ended my notes with Paul's still a bitch because I don't know. Paul's probably the thing that I found the most frustrating. I don't think he's the worst actor in the miniseries, but he's always there. So you're always like, oh, there's that guy again. We're just gonna have to put up with his shit.
Frustrating. You know why it's frustrating? Because you're supposed to like this guy,
right?
And you can't.
He's definitely the one I would have recast.
Because like Fade Ralph, the actor, is also pretty bad, but he's only in it for like 15 minutes. Right? Paul has like 3 solid hours of screen time. And he's always using either his petulant face or his whiny face through like half of the movie. And you're like, cut that shit out. You're like a Kwisatz Haderach, or like, just stop doing that. Stop being that way.
You know who might have been a better choice?
Anyone?
Casper Van Dien. Starship Troopers is 97.
You know what? He probably would have been too expensive at the time, though.
Or what about
if this would have been made 3 or 4 years later, he probably, because like Casper Van Dien, like this is his bread and butter now. But in 2000, he was probably still riding a little high.
It could be.
How about the guy that plays Dean on Supernatural? He could do it.
I think he was like 4.
I can't remember his name though. His real name's Funky.
His real name's Funky. Funky.
No,
Yeah.
It's like some weird nerdy name. You'd like it.
Well, I don't have any other notes on this thing. I think let's just say, is this a good movie or is this a bad movie?
I'm giving this 2 thumbs down. It's bad. I would not watch it again. I watched it when it first came out and I didn't like it then either.
Kale, is this a good movie or a bad movie?
Who, me?
Yeah, that's your Kale. That's your name.
Okay, I forgot who I was for a second.
It happens.
All right, the uniforms are terrible. The graphics are terrible. The plot is hard to follow and choppy and got a lot of holes in it. And I don't know. It's okay, I guess.
Brandon, is this a good movie or a bad movie?
If you're comparing it to like good movies, then no.
Well, that is how you compare them.
Right. But if you're comparing it to the Lynch thing, I think it's superior. I think it's the one I would, if forced to rewatch, I would.
That's taking an awfully long walk, Brandon.
I was glad when the Lynch one was done.
I would watch
this
the
one,
84 film 10 times before I watched this film again.
Oh my God. I couldn't do 10 minutes of that film over again.
It's the thing. Here's the thing. I said the David Lynch film was a bad film, and it was. And I like this movie less than that movie. So this is obviously also a bad film, which is interesting. So now this is our third video on the Dune universe. We will not be doing Dune, Children of Dune. It is a thing. It's out there. I'm not going to watch it unless, you guys promise to give us like a cajillion views for watching it. I'm not going to watch it.
I heard Venom's going to be in it.
Venom and the Fast and the Furious guys. Apparently they drive a car through Dune. No, not
and
watching
the new
it.
James Bond.
It's a worm with ground effects.
And
I hear that's actually going to be in the Denis Villeneuve. The worms will all have ground effects and nitrous.
Like little LED lights.
Now I just have a picture in my head of like Vin Diesel with like the reins on top of a worm, like looking next, and there's going to be like a CGI'd in Paul.
He'll be holding the reins like this.
Yeah, like a lean on.
I don't know. You brought up
the nose.
You brought
I
up the
feel
Holy
like we're
Grail
slipping
earlier.
away here. We're getting off topic.
You brought up the Holy
What
Grail
now?
earlier, and I couldn't get that out of my head. I've been imagining Dune done as a Monty Python production.
That would be interesting. I could see that done as a parody. It would work. Well, so as a group, we cannot recommend Dune the miniseries. As a group, we can. As a person, Brandon can kind of sort of recommend it from a certain perspective.
As a person.
Yeah.
Which is not exactly what I would call a shining recommendation.
No, I wouldn't say that.
And Paul is in fact a bitch. We have unanimous consent on his yes. So
Nothing against the actor.
Maybe a little against the actor. So it's one of those things I always hate. I hate saying like, well, I don't want to, because like I don't know, but like he had 3 hours of screen time to learn to act, and just never really happened. So yeah, maybe a little on the actor this time.
Oh, I also thought his sister, though less explored, I did think the Lynch film did the sister a little bit better as far as exploring her, but her scene with Harkonnen at the end I thought was better in the miniseries too, where she goes, I got you with the Atreides gum Jabbar.
You see, I liked her I thought in the Lynch movie she was creepier.
Yeah, but she's not meant to be creepy.
Yeah, but it's a David Lynch movie, so you have to like, it's like you have to bend to the rules of a David Lynch universe where she's a creepy little creeper.
I'm waiting to hear from the expert over here.
All right. Well, Brandon, do you have any final thoughts on Dune, the sci-fi miniseries?
Read the book.
Jim, do you have any final thoughts on Dune, the sci-fi miniseries?
Stay away from it. Read the book. If you feel like it, watch the 1984 extended cut and view it as maybe a cult movie, not as a good movie.
It is 3 hours though, so get ready.
It's way better to spend the 3 hours watching the extended cut than to waste your time watching 2 hours of the theatrical cut.
I agree with that. Kale, do you have any final thoughts on Dune, the sci-fi miniseries?
Maybe watch it once.
We have a shining recommendation. My final thoughts. Yeah, I didn't like it. There's not nothing there. I don't think it's nothing. But it's not something that I'm probably ever going to watch again. And I don't intend to watch the sequel. So, take that with a grain of salt. All right. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. And I want everybody to have a good day. And can't even say my own catchphrase. I want everybody to have a good drink and have a good day.
Adios, my people.
Adios.
You have duties, responsibilities.
How can I ever forget?
again. Every day I have to eat responsibility for breakfast and duty for dinner.